Chapter 1. The Debt. The night air in the small village was crisp, the scent of pine trees and fresh earth lingering in the cold breeze. Alone beneath the shadow of the towering mountains, Lyra had always felt like an outsider. Orphaned at a young age, she was raised in the Pax orphanage, her days spent in solitude, trying to understand her place in a world where she was considered weak, a mere omega. Her parents had died in a violent battle between two rival packs, leaving her with no family, no one to protect her. In her pack, omegas were treated as little more than pawns in the grand game of politics. Despite her frailty, she had always dreamed of finding her mate, someone who would love her, protect her, and accept her for who she was. But as time passed, she grew bitter, realizing that her value was only seen in terms of what she could offer. A future mate for an alpha, or a pawn to be traded for favors. One day, her world would shatter. The alpha of her pack, Alpha Calder, a fierce and calculating leader, had made a decision. His pack had been at war with the neighboring pack for years, the tension building to a breaking point. And it was Lyra's life that would pay the price. "Lyra, you are being offered as payment," Alpha Calder's voice echoed through the orphanage hall, and she froze. His gaze was cold, devoid of any warmth. "A settlement of debts between our pack and the Alpha King of the Silver Moon pack. You will go to him. The king has requested you. You will belong to him." She couldn't breathe. She had heard of the Alpha King, Rieger, a powerful leader known for his ruthlessness and his control over the packlands. No one dared to challenge him. He was feared and respected by all, and now she was being traded like a mere trinket. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm just an omega. I have nothing to offer." But Alpha Calder only smirked. "You offer your loyalty, your obedience, and your blood. Your life is the price we must pay." Chapter 2. The Journey to Silvermoon. Lyra's hands were bound tightly with rough rope as she was led through the darkened woods, the moon casting an eerie glow over the path ahead. She could hear the sounds of wolves howling in the distance, but they were far away. The only sound she could focus on was the beating of her own heart, loud, fast, and filled with terror. The journey to the Silver Moon Pack's territory was long. For days, she traveled in silence, surrounded by a small group of wolves from her pack, none of whom spoke to her. They treated her as though she were invisible, a mere object to be delivered to the Alpha King. She was scared. Her entire life had been spent in the shadows, unnoticed and disregarded. Now she was being handed over to a king, a man she had only heard rumors of, most of them terrifying. He was said to be an unforgiving leader, a wolf with a heart of stone. What would he do with her? Would he see her as nothing more than an object? Or would he be kind? She didn't know, but the uncertainty was eating away at her. After days of exhausting travel, they finally reached the Silver Moon Pack's borders. The air was thick with the scent of pine, and the land felt alive with power. The Silver Moon Pack was a place of strength, beauty, and danger. Lyra felt small, insignificant against the sprawling lands that stretched out before her. The wolves that escorted her took her to the gates of a towering stone castle, surrounded by lush forests. It felt like a fortress, imposing and indomitable. The gates creaked open, and Lyra was led inside, her feet dragging with every step. Chapter 3. The Alpha King. The moment Lyra stepped into the castle's grand hall, she felt the power in the air, thick and palpable. The walls were adorned with silver banners, the moon's emblem etched into every corner. She could sense the presence of the Alpha King even before she saw him. And then there he was. Rieger, the Alpha King, stood at the top of the stairs, his presence commanding and unyielding. His dark hair fell to his shoulders, and his eyes, a striking shade of amber, locked onto hers as soon as she entered the room. The intensity of his gaze made her breath catch in her throat. He was a force of nature, tall and broad-shouldered, his posture radiating authority. "Is this the one?" Rieger's voice rumbled, low and powerful. His gaze never wavered from her, and she felt as though he could see into her very soul. "Yes, your majesty," the lead wolf from her pack answered. She is the one. The debt is settled. Rieger's eyes flicked back to Lyra, his expression unreadable. Leave us, he commanded, and the wolves obediently filed out of the room, leaving them alone. Lyra felt the weight of his gaze on her as she stood in the center of the grand hall, trembling with fear. She wanted to run to escape, but she knew there was nowhere to go. She was trapped, bound by the debt of her pack. Come here, Rieger's voice was a soft command, and for reasons she couldn't understand, Lyra's feet moved before she could think. She walked toward him, each step heavier than the last. When she was close enough, he reached out and placed a hand on her cheek, his touch cold yet oddly comforting. You have nothing to fear from me, he said, his voice steady. I will not harm you. But his words did little to calm her racing heart. Why did they offer me to you? I'm just an Omega. I have nothing of value. Rieger's gaze softened for a brief moment, but then it hardened again. You have more value than you know. And you will learn your place here as I see fit. Chapter 5. The Bond Awakens. Days passed, and something began to change between them. Rieger's coldness started to melt away, and Lyra found herself drawn to him in ways she couldn't explain. Despite the circumstances, there was something undeniable about the pull between them. One evening, under the light of a full moon, Rieger approached her again. This time, his gaze held an intensity that left her breathless. He reached out, his hand brushing her cheek, and Lyra felt the surge of power between them, the bond that had been dormant now awakened. Do you feel it? He whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The bond between us. Lyra nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never felt anything like this before. It was as though her very soul recognized his, and it called out to him in return. Rieger leaned down, his lips brushing against her ear. You are mine, Lyra, and I will protect you no matter the cost. Her breath hitched as the bond between them deepened, and for the first time in her life she felt truly seen. Not as an Omega, not as a pawn, but as someone worthy of love. Chapter 6. Love's Awakening. As the days turned into weeks, Lyra and Rieger grew closer. She began to understand him, to see the complexity beneath his cold exterior. He was not the ruthless ruler she had imagined. He had suffered, lost, and fought for everything he had. And now he was fighting for her. Lyra's feelings for him grew stronger, and with each passing day, she realized that the bond between them was not just a matter of fate, it was something that could change the world. Rieger had not just claimed her as a token of debt. He had claimed her heart, and she had claimed his. Their love, born from the ashes of betrayal and debt, would become the foundation upon which their kingdom would stand, strong, unbreakable, and forever bound by the moonlight. Chapter 7. The Weight of Power. The days in Silver Moon Castle passed with an intensity that Lyra wasn't sure she was prepared for. Her life was no longer simple, no longer filled with the quiet solitude of her orphan days. Now there was Rieger, and the entire weight of his kingdom seemed to rest on both their shoulders. Lyra had been trained in the customs of the pack. Though she had no true status as an Omega, she had been taught the basics of pack hierarchy, of obedience, and of the traditions that kept their society intact. But the Silver Moon Pack was a world apart. Here the very air hummed with power, and Rieger, the king, ruled over it all. She watched him, standing at the grand balcony of the castle, looking out at the forest that stretched endlessly beneath them. His silhouette was strong and noble, but there was always something burdening him. Even in the rare moments when he let his guard down, when he wasn't the cold, commanding leader of the pack, she could still see it, the weight of his crown. Rieger, she whispered, stepping into the room, her voice breaking the silence. Why do you carry this alone? He turned to face her, his amber eyes softening. Because no one else can bear it, he replied, his tone heavy with the truth he rarely spoke aloud. I have spent my life building this kingdom. I cannot afford to show weakness. Lyra stepped closer, her heart aching for him. You are not weak, Rieger. and you do not have to carry it alone. I am here." He hesitated for a moment before walking toward her, his strong arms pulling her into his chest. "I never thought I would find someone like you, Lyra," he said quietly, his voice vulnerable. "Someone who would stand by me, no matter the cost." She nestled against him, breathing in the scent of the forest that clung to him. "You don't have to do this alone. We're a team. And I believe in you." For the first time in what felt like forever, Rieger allowed himself to close his eyes, feeling the warmth of her embrace, her love. It was a comfort he never knew he needed. Chapter 8. The Stirring of Rivalries. Even as Rieger and Lyra grew closer, there were still those in the pack who watched them with suspicion, with distrust. Rieger's claim on her wasn't just about love, it was also about power. And many feared the implications of the Alpha King's mate being an orphaned Omega from a rival pack. It wasn't long before whispers began to stir. Some questioned Lyra's worth, doubting whether she was truly deserving of Rieger's trust and affection. She could feel the cold eyes on her whenever she walked the halls of the castle. Her status, once insignificant, had now become a point of contention among the Silvermoon wolves. One evening, while she was walking through the royal gardens, Lyra overheard a conversation between two of Rieger's most trusted lieutenants. They were speaking in hushed tones, but the words were clear. "She's an Omega. What does she bring to the table? What makes her worthy of the king?" "I don't trust her," another voice added, sharp with distrust. "She's nothing but a piece to settle a debt." Lyra's heart sank. The weight of their words stung more than she expected. She had already felt like an outsider, but now, even within the pack, she was being questioned. The voice of the second lieutenant lowered, speaking softly but with venom. "It's only a matter of time before the king tires of her. Omegas like her, weak, unworthy, they don't last in this world." Lyra turned away quickly, retreating into the shadows of the garden, her chest tight with hurt. She knew Rieger cared for her, but the doubts swirling around her, the way others saw her, made her feel like she was living in a world that didn't understand. Chapter 9. Unveiling the Truth. The next day, Lyra approached Rieger with her heart heavy. She couldn't bear the thought of their bond being torn apart by the judgments of others. "Rieger," she began, her voice wavering. "I overheard something yesterday. Some of the pack. They question my place here." He turned to her, his expression darkening. "I knew this would happen. You are my mate, and many will never accept that." "But why?" she asked, her eyes searching his. "Why would they see me as weak? I am not just an Omega. I'm your mate." Rieger's jaw clenched, his fists tightening at his sides. "Because they see you as a symbol of weakness. But they are wrong. You are stronger than they will ever understand. You have a power within you that they cannot see." "But why does it matter what they think?" Lyra asked, her heart aching. "I thought we had something real." "We do," Rieger said, stepping closer to her, his hands gently cupping her face. "But power, my love, is something that requires respect. And not all will give you that respect. Not yet." See Chapter 10, The Storm Within. Despite Rieger's reassurance, the whispers didn't stop. They only grew louder, and soon the tension in the castle became unbearable. Lyra could feel the eyes of the pack on her wherever she went. There was nowhere she could hide from the judgment. One night, when she was alone in her chambers, the door suddenly burst open, and a familiar face entered. "Lyra," said a voice dark and cold. It was Renard, one of the higher-ranking wolves in the Silvermoon pack, and a man who had made no secret of his disdain for her. "You don't belong here." Lyra froze, her heart pounding. "What do you want, Renard?" He stepped closer, his eyes narrowed with malice. "You're nothing. You were traded to the king as payment for a debt. That's all you are. Don't think for a second that you'll ever truly belong here." Lyra took a step back, her body trembling. "You don't know me." "No," Renard sneered. "But I know your kind. Omegas like you are weak. And in the end you will break." He moved toward her, his presence oppressive, but before he could take another step, a low growl echoed from the doorway. Rieger. The Alpha King's presence filled the room like a storm. "Touch her again, Renard," he warned, his voice a thunderous growl, "and I'll show you what true weakness looks like." Renard, though powerful in his own right, hesitated for only a moment before backing down. He shot Lyra one last venomous glance and left the room, leaving the tension hanging in the air. Rieger approached her slowly, his eyes filled with concern. "Are you all right?" Lyra nodded, her voice shaky. "I don't know if I can do this. The pack, they don't want me here." Rieger's gaze softened, and he cupped her face in his hands. "You belong here because you belong to me. Don't let anyone else tell you otherwise." She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to feel safe. Chapter 11. A Love Forged in Fire. The next few days were quiet, but Lyra could sense a shift in the atmosphere around her. The pack began to view her with a little more respect, especially after Rieger had made it clear that she was his mate, and his authority was not to be questioned. Yet, in the midst of the political tension and power struggles that still threatened to tear the pack apart, Lyra and Rieger found a moment of peace together. It wasn't always easy. There were still those who wanted to see her fail, to see her fall. But with Rieger by her side, she began to feel stronger. She wasn't just a pawn in a game. She was his equal. And together, they would face whatever challenges the future held. One evening, as they sat together beneath the moonlight in the royal garden, Rieger spoke quietly. "You are more than I could have ever asked for, Lyra. More than I deserve." She turned to him, her heart full. "You are the king, Rieger. You deserve everything." He smiled, his gaze softening. "And I have everything I need as long as you are with me." Chapter 12. The Battle for the Kingdom. The peace that Lyra and Rieger had worked so hard to cultivate was soon threatened by forces beyond their control. A rival pack, angry and jealous of Silvermoon's power, began to encroach on their territory, raiding villages and threatening to destabilize the kingdom. The time had come for Rieger to act, to lead his people in a battle to protect everything he had built. Lyra, despite her fear, stood by his side, ready to fight for the pack, for their future together. Rieger looked at her, his expression hardening with determination. "We will not back down. Not now. Not ever." Together they led the pack into battle, their love and their bond driving them forward. And as they fought side by side, Lyra realized that her place in this world was no longer defined by her past or by the judgments of others. She was the Alpha King's mate. She was strong, and she would stand beside him no matter what came. Chapter 13. The Final Victory. After the battle had been fought and won, with Silvermoon pack emerging victorious, Lyra stood beside Rieger, watching as the kingdom began to rebuild. The rival pack had been defeated, and peace had been restored. The kingdom was safe once more, and their love had proven stronger than anything that had threatened to tear them apart. Lyra knew there would be more challenges ahead, but she no longer feared them. With Rieger at her side, she knew they could face anything. The bond between them had been forged in the fire of conflict and the strength of their love. And together, they would rule Silvermoon with compassion, wisdom, and unbreakable strength. Chapter 14. The King's Dilemma. Despite the victory, peace was fleeting. After the dust had settled from the battle with the rival pack, Rieger found himself faced with an impossible decision. The threat was not entirely over. Other packs, emboldened by the Silvermoon pack's recent conflict, began to challenge Rieger's rule. As the king, Rieger knew that to maintain the strength of his kingdom, he needed to act swiftly. Lyra, though still adjusting to her new life in the Silvermoon castle, could see the strain that Rieger was under. She knew her role was not just as his mate but as his partner, someone to help him make the difficult choices that came with leadership. One evening, as the moonlight bathed their chambers in silver, Rieger sat at his desk, his brow furrowed with concern. The reports had come in. Several neighboring packs were making moves against Silvermoon. "We cannot afford to let them think we are weak," Rieger muttered under his breath, scanning the papers before him. Lyra stood by his side, her heart aching for him. She could see the weight of the crown crushing him, the weight of responsibility that no one else would ever fully understand. "Rieger," she said gently, her voice soft but strong, "you don't have to carry this alone. We will face this together like we always have." He looked up at her, and for a moment the hardness in his gaze softened. "I cannot risk losing you, Lyra. I will do whatever it takes to keep you safe." "You already have," she replied, her heart swelling. "We've already overcome so much. Together, we'll overcome whatever comes next." Chapter 15. A Wolf's Betrayal. As Silvermoon's enemies closed in, Rieger began to send his warriors to different borders to strengthen his defenses. Among them was a wolf he had trusted for years, Baron, one of his most loyal commanders. But as the weeks passed, Rieger began to notice troubling signs. Baron's messages were inconsistent, his reports sketchy. Then, one fateful night, news came that Baron had betrayed him, aligning himself with one of Rieger's oldest rivals, Alpha Varek of the Shadow Pack. It was a blow that hit Rieger hard. He had trusted Baron like a brother. Lyra felt his pain acutely. She knew this betrayal would cut him deeper than anything before, but she also knew that it was a test of their bond. As Rieger prepared to confront Baron and his newfound alliance with the Shadow Pack, Lyra stood by his side. "We will face this together," she whispered, taking his hand. "Don't let his betrayal define you. You are stronger than that." Rieger gave her a grim smile. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Lyra." Together, they moved forward to face the coming storm. Baron's betrayal was only the beginning. Chapter 16. The Hunt for Baron. The following days were filled with tension as Rieger and Lyra, along with their most trusted warriors, tracked down Baron. The hunt took them deep into the forest surrounding the kingdom, a place where the trees stood tall and dark, their branches reaching out like gnarled fingers. As they ventured further into the wilderness, Rieger's eyes remained fixed ahead. His thoughts were consumed by the betrayal, and he could feel the anger bubbling beneath the surface. But when he looked at Lyra, he found calm in her presence. She was his anchor in this storm, grounding him when everything else threatened to unravel. Finally, after days of tracking, they found Baron, alone, cornered in a clearing, his back against a large stone. He was a formidable warrior, but facing Rieger, there was no escape. "Why, Baron?" Rieger demanded, his voice low and filled with a quiet rage. "Why betray your pack, your king?" Baron's eyes were filled with defiance, though they betrayed a hint of regret. "The Shadow Pack offered me power," he said, his voice hoarse. "You have always been the king, Rieger. I wanted more. I wanted to be the one in control." "You were never meant to rule like this," Rieger said coldly. "You were always meant to serve the pack, just as I have. But your betrayal ends now." With a swift motion, Rieger lunged forward, his claws extending. Baron fought back, but he was no match for the Alpha King's power. In a final clash, Baron fell, his life extinguished by the weight of his choices. Lyra watched from the sidelines, her heart heavy but resolute. Rieger turned to her, his eyes hard, but she could see the pain behind them. "It's over," he murmured, his voice tinged with regret. Chapter 17. A Kingdom in Crisis. With Baron's death, the kingdom was shaken to its core. The Shadow Pack had been dealt a blow, but the rift within Silvermoon was just as dangerous. Many of the wolves who had followed Baron were disillusioned with Rieger's leadership, and murmurs of dissent spread like wildfire. The pack's unity, once unbreakable, was now fractured. Rieger knew that to maintain order, he would have to make difficult choices. He would need to reassert his authority, show the pack that his leadership was unyielding. But it was not a task he could do alone. Lyra, though not a warrior, had become his greatest ally. She was the voice of reason in the chaos, the heart that beat in time with the kingdom. "Rieger," she said one evening as they walked through the castle gardens, "you don't have to do this alone. You have me." Rieger looked at her, his heart swelling. "I never knew I needed you as much as I do now. You are my strength, Lyra. You make me whole." They stopped at a small fountain, the water sparkling under the light of the moon. Lyra turned to face him, her gaze unwavering. "We will rebuild this kingdom together, one step at a time." Rieger nodded, knowing in his heart that with Lyra by his side, they could face any crisis that came their way. Chapter 18. The Council of Wolves. To restore unity within Silvermoon, Rieger called a meeting of the pack's leaders, a council of wolves who represented the various clans within the kingdom. The room was filled with tension, as each wolf held their own opinion on the state of the pack. Lyra sat beside Rieger, her presence offering a sense of calm. Though she was not a leader by blood, her wisdom and strength had earned her the respect of those present. It was clear that she had become an integral part of Rieger's rule. "Silence!" Rieger's voice rang out, commanding the room. The murmurs died down, and the wolves turned their attention to him. "I will not allow my pack to be divided. Those who question my leadership will have their answers." He turned to the council. "The time for disunity is over. We will rebuild, we will strengthen our bonds, and we will not let outside forces tear us apart. I trust that each of you will do your part in that." One by one, the leaders nodded, acknowledging Rieger's authority. Lyra watched the proceedings with a quiet strength, knowing that the road ahead would not be easy, but it was a road they would walk together. Chapter 19. Bonds Forged in the Fire. With the council's approval, Rieger and Lyra began the process of rebuilding Silvermoon. They worked tirelessly, re-establishing relationships with neighboring packs, reinforcing borders, and strengthening alliances. The kingdom was slowly beginning to heal from the wounds of betrayal. But it was not just the pack that needed mending, it was also their personal bond. The challenges they had faced, the betrayals and the pressures of leadership, had strained their relationship. Yet, each challenge brought them closer, teaching them how to communicate, trust, and support one another. One evening, as the sun set over the castle, Rieger took Lyra's hand and led her to the balcony. "I never thought I could feel peace again," he said quietly. "But with you I do." Lyra smiled, her heart full. "We've been through so much, but we've built something strong. Together." He kissed her forehead, his lips lingering there for a moment. "You are my strength, Lyra. My heart, my soul. I don't know how I ever lived without you." Chapter 20. A New Beginning. As the seasons changed and the pack continued to heal, Lyra and Rieger's love grew stronger. Their bond was no longer just about the mate bond. It was about respect, understanding, and a shared vision for the future. Together, they had weathered the storms and had come out stronger on the other side. Silvermoon flourished under their rule, a kingdom united by love and strength. And as Lyra stood beside Rieger, looking out over the kingdom they had built together, she knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them as one. Their love, forged in fire and tempered by the trials of leadership, was unbreakable. And with each passing day, they built a future that was theirs, together. Chapter 21. A Threat from Within. Just when things seemed to settle into a peaceful routine, a new threat emerged, one that came from within the Silvermoon pack itself. A faction of discontented wolves, still loyal to Baron, began to stir unrest. Their whispered words of rebellion were like a poison spreading through the pack. These wolves believed that Rieger's rule was no longer what it had been, that Lyra's influence had softened him, and that the pack needed a stronger hand. Lyra could feel the tension building in the air. Late one evening, she heard loud voices from the courtyard and rushed to the window. She saw Rieger standing before a small group of wolves, his posture tall and commanding. She didn't know what they were saying, but she could see the defiance in the wolves' eyes. She knew it wouldn't be long before things came to a head. Chapter 22. The Challenge. It wasn't long before one of the most prominent of Baron's supporters, a powerful wolf named Kalen, challenged Rieger for the title of Alpha King. Kalen was not just any wolf. He was a fierce fighter, known for his strength and brutality. He believed that the pack needed to return to its old ways, that Rhaegar had become weak under the influence of his mate, and that only someone like him could restore the pack's former glory. "Rhaegar!" Kaelin bellowed in the royal hall, his voice filled with anger. "You are unfit to rule. You have allowed weakness to seep into this kingdom. I challenge you for the throne." Rhaegar stood tall, his eyes cold. He had seen challenges before, but this one was different. This wasn't just a challenge for leadership. It was a challenge to his very core. Lyra stood beside him, her heart pounding with fear. She had never seen Rhaegar so resolute, but she also knew that this battle would be one that defined not only their future but the future of the entire kingdom. "Accept my challenge, Alpha King," Kaelin spat. "Or are you too weak to defend your title?" Chapter 23, The Duel. The duel was set for the following day, and the entire pack gathered to witness the fight. It would be a battle to the death unless one of them yielded. Rhaegar's reputation as a strong, unyielding leader was on the line, but Lyra's heart ached as she watched him prepare. "Do not fight for me, Rhaegar," she whispered, pulling him aside before the duel. "Fight for our kingdom, for your people. But do not let this challenge define you." He held her face in his hands, his gaze steady. "I fight for us, Lyra. For everything we've built together." And with that, he walked into the arena to face Kaelin, the future of Silvermoon hanging in the balance. Chapter 24. Victory and Aftermath. The battle was brutal, each blow exchanged with raw intensity. Kaelin was a formidable opponent, but Rhaegar's strength, his will to protect those he loved, made him an even fiercer warrior. The fight raged on, each moment pushing them both to their limits. In the end, Rhaegar emerged victorious, his claws sinking into Kaelin's throat. The arena fell silent, and Lyra let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Rhaegar stood over Kaelin's body, his chest heaving with exhaustion. He looked up at Lyra, his amber eyes filled with a fierce love. "We've won, Lyra," he said, his voice hoarse. "But the battle doesn't end here." Chapter 25. The Final Test. Though Kaelin was dead, there were still those within the pack who refused to accept Rhaegar's rule. The Silvermoon pack was divided, half loyal to Rhaegar, the other half still loyal to Baron's old ideals. Lyra knew that they had to restore unity within the pack, but it wouldn't be easy. Together, they set out to strengthen alliances, rebuild trust, and remind the pack of the strength and unity that had once made Silvermoon great. Slowly but surely, Rhaegar and Lyra worked side by side, guiding the pack through this final test. Chapter 26. The Rise of Silvermoon. Months passed, and Silvermoon began to heal. The wounds of betrayal and division were slowly mended by Rhaegar and Lyra's leadership. The pack was unified, stronger than ever, and Rhaegar's reign was once again unchallenged. Lyra had found her place as his queen, not just in title, but in heart. Together they had weathered every storm, overcome every obstacle, and built a kingdom that would stand the test of time. Chapter 27. A New Era. Silvermoon was thriving. The people were united, their future secure. And as Lyra stood by Rhaegar's side, she knew that their love had not only survived, it had become the very foundation of everything they had built. Together, they had created a legacy that would live on through the generations. Chapter 28. The True Power of Love. The kingdom of Silvermoon had flourished under their reign. The strength of their love had been tested by trials, but in the end, it was their bond that had seen them through. Lyra had gone from being a discarded Omega to the queen of the Silvermoon pack. And Rhaegar had learned to lead not just with strength, but with compassion, knowing that his love for her was his greatest power. Chapter 29. The Future Awaits. As the sun set over the castle, Rhaegar and Lyra stood together, looking out over the kingdom they had fought so hard to protect. They knew that the future was uncertain, but with each other by their side, they could face anything. Chapter 30. Forever Together. In that moment, under the light of the full moon, Lyra and Rhaegar knew that their bond was unbreakable. They had built a kingdom, a family, and a future together. And as they walked hand in hand into the future, they knew that their love would forever be the foundation of Silvermoon. The end.